Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and sincere apologies for the delay. We had a few technical issues as well there. You can probably see on your screen that the wonderful Professor Yong Zhao is joining us from the car. He's on the move. He might even show you shortly where he is. So we've managed to get him with us, which is fantastic because he's had a number of delays this afternoon, unfortunately. But very excited to have Professor Yong Zhao with us. Thank you for joining us for this short webinar this afternoon, where we're having a really insightful conversation with Yong about how we can reimagine the Australian school system so that it actually supports everyone. We hear a lot of talk at the moment about supporting our students and our young people, and also about maybe some of the crisis that we're hearing about in education. But can we actually reimagine the system for the success of everyone? And really looking forward to hearing Professor Yong Zhao's thoughts on this topic. Before we do get straight into it, I do want to acknowledge all the traditional custodians of the lands on which you're all joining from today, wherever you might be joining from. I would like to acknowledge the grief and the loss of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and that they have endured, caused by the harm of colonization over the last 200 years, and the harm that has resulted in historical, cultural, and intergenerational trauma. We recognize that these lands have been and always will be lands of learning and teaching. And here at MacKillop, we stand with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in solidarity now and always. And most people joining know who we are, but there are a few people joining who maybe don't know so much about MacKillop. And just very briefly to kind of mention that Justin and I are from this wonderful organization called the MacKillop Institute, which is part of a bigger organization called MacKillop Family Services that works with children, young people, and families all across Australia. And the MacKillop Institute is our way of sharing some of our practice and sharing some of our knowledge and insights out with anyone that also works with children and young people. And we want to do that to make sure that knowledge and insights get out there, and to also share and partner up with wonderful people such as Professor Yong Zhao, who we're talking to this afternoon. And hopefully together we can start some conversations. So today with me, we've got Justin Roberts, and I might get you to give a little wave, Justin. There we go. And Justin Roberts is my wonderful colleague who is the National Program Director of Relate, which is a whole school model that supports teachers and students, and that we support multiple schools across Australia with here at MacKillop. Justin is a lifelong educator and learner, one who is very, very passionate about inclusion, equity, and access. And Justin was the former principal of our schools, the MacKillop Education Schools, which are special assistance schools working with some of the most vulnerable and at-risk young people. He now, as I mentioned, runs a program called Relate, where we work with schools all across Australia. And so he's now having much bigger impact by working with thousands of educators and students across the country. And as a result of that, this year he was nominated as one of the most influential educators by The Educator magazine. So Justin, you're going to be mostly taking the lead for this conversation with Yong, and I'm going to maybe slip into the back for a little bit and do some of the supporting. But Justin, thanks for being here, and thanks for helping with the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I wasn't expecting a slide, so that's rather
Oh, here
embarrassing.
you go. Oh, no, you
Thank
get a
you for
slide.
that.
You
With a
absolutely get a
photograph as
slide.
well.
And just before I introduce a very, very special guest, who, as I mentioned, might give us a nice quick tour of where he is in the world at the moment, just to mention that the chat function has been turned off, so you can't post directly into the chat function, but there is a Q&A function in Microsoft Teams. You should see that at the top or the side. If you click on that Q&A function, you'll be able to post some questions for Yong. We're going to have a brief conversation. We're only going to talk to Yong directly, Justin, for about 20, 25 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A for everyone who's here listening. So if you've got some questions for Yong, please put them in the Q&A, and then Justin and myself will facilitate that after the conversation. If you need any support, please also feel free to put it in the Q&A chat, and then I'll help you, maybe if it's any technical issues or anything else. But without further ado, let me please take the honor of introducing Professor Yong Zhao. I've had the privilege of talking to Yong a number of times now, and I always find it both enlightening and insightful, as well as lightening and humorous and funny. I think Yong is an amazing storyteller, as well as such an exceptional academic researcher and author. If you haven't come across any of Professor Yong Zhao's work yet, I highly recommend that you do. There's over 30 books that you can choose from, as well as hundreds of publications and journal articles. Yong is a very distinguished author, academic, and researcher, as I mentioned, who is also a professor at the University of Canvas and at the University of Melbourne in educational leadership. Last I think we spoke about this, Yong spends half his time in the US and half his time in Australia, lecturing between the two universities. And his main areas of research very much are on rethinking traditional education systems, and especially how we can do them to foster competencies like creativity, entrepreneurship, and what we often term global competencies. He is definitely an advocate for educational systems that empower students and all people to become active participants in their own learning. And he is a very influential thinker in the education space. Yong, thank you so much for joining us. And I am going to hand over to you and Justin to have a bit of a conversation. And hopefully we can find out where you are in the world. Maybe that's the first question, Justin, before I actually hand it over to you. Yong, where are you?
Well, thanks, Christopher. I am actually in Shanghai, China. I just landed from Chongqing. I want to apologize to all the audience for being late, but blame Eastern China Airline. Don't blame me. I was supposed to be there early, but also, of all things that could delay airplanes, today I had my first encounter with a conveyor belt that carries your baggage that actually was broke. I never had that before. That's my 1001 reasons airplanes got delayed, but that's one. Thank you. Good to see you, Chris, and good to see you, Justin.
Yeah, you're looking far too happy and calm, Yong, for someone who's just got off a delayed flight.
Okay. So this is Shanghai. You want to see the road here? Okay. If you have never been to Shanghai, this is the Pudong side. Okay. We can have a real conversation.
I love just before we jump into it, Yong, I love that you often talk about global competence and global competencies for our children and our young people. But talk about that right now as we're talking to you and you're in a cab in Shanghai, just flown in from another part of China. I'm in one part of Australia, Justin's in another. I absolutely love that we can do this.
This is just great, So go ahead. I hope people are listening. And again, I really want to apologize for delay for about half an hour. Sorry about that.
No, we totally understand, Yong. And I might get started with the first question, actually. And as part of our work, we travel kind of across Australia and work with schools, and not only from feedback from those schools, but also we hear a lot in the media these days about the pressures on schools, workloads of teachers, stress, teachers leaving the profession. as well as kind of increase student mental health and well-being challenges in schools. I'm just really interested to hear from you on what you think are some of the drivers or the reasons behind the current challenges that we're hearing about.
Well, Justin, I think there are many reasons. You have COVID, you have significant depression, anxiety, the split society, climate change, the election of Trump. So just happened, and the division politics, but also a lot of times I think the emergence of artificial intelligence and the disappearance of jobs. I think there are many, many reasons. This is a bad time, but human history has seen bad times. There could be worse times. There's, but I think you can also feel social media, like Chris said, we're connected. Yes, indeed, we're connected, but that also may pass on a new kind of uh, unmanufactured word for people. I think when technology was not so advanced, messages don't spread as fast. I would say probably like in China, yesterday's election, there were more Chinese people engaged in this election than maybe Americans, but there are more Chinese people in China anyway. So I think there are many, many reasons, but I love what you put up as the title, the reimagining. I really want to invite the courageous people to reimagine. We have so many opportunities. Why do we keep focusing on the crisis?
Yeah, it's a good point, and that's one of the things that can get you down. I'm a teacher myself, is being told constantly that the work's too hard, and I think sometimes we lose the connection to teaching is a vocation. It's got this real deep purpose in itself, and that's we get well-being from that as well. And I'm just wondering, in your opinion, do you think that we've lost a little bit of the purpose of a teacher in the world today? Are we clear on that as a profession, but also a society?
Well, I think that's a very challenging question. I would say perhaps, the teacher education always thinks it has a purpose, but how clear that purpose was, we don't know. For example, right, we used to teach citizenship, we used to teach morality and ethics, and now we are really focused on literacy and numeracy, which I think Australia is horrible in doing. Focus on that. When machines can create music, create video, can do everything for you. We're still focusing on the most basic, reading literacy. I think teachers right now in the new age should be focusing a lot more uh, on reimagining humanity in the age of smart machines. I mean, I don't think teachers really truly had a collective purpose other than what schools of education have been trying to teach them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm interested to hear if we think about what teachers should be doing now. How do you believe that we can create, I guess, environments that are more flexible, more supportive, but also more innovative in this space? What should education be moving towards now?
Well, I think I've been doing a lecture tour recently in China and also in Kazakhstan. I don't know if you how many have been to Kazakhstan. That's as far north, and is as far north as Australia, as far south. So it's everybody is rethinking about this. I think it's time to think about how do we truly serve every student. Schools has truly failed in that. You have I've always said in Australia, you have your NAPLAN scores, you have your this and that, and and the thing about your ATA scores, that's really ranking people. When we talk about equity, we never think about equity based on individual talents, individual interests, individual families, individual locations. I mean, we try to put people like you were, in tourist streets, and the same as in you're born in Melbourne, Melbourne, suburbs of Melbourne, some suburbs in Melbourne, Footscray, as well as in other east side. I think we have to give every student truly the opportunity for them to thrive in their own way. And with artificial intelligence, that's possible. But traditionally, you have to go to Melbourne, you have to go to ANU, you have to go to someplace to beat others. The traditional society was created based on a selfish model. Somebody can beat others because there are some fewer jobs that will give you the luxury. Most jobs were physical labor, but today we truly have arrived at the time that every talent can be valuable and every talent can create value for others. I think that's the first thing. Can we, School of Education, deliver, schools deliver education that serves every child, makes this child great in his or her or their own way. I think the second thing I think we need to change is education needs to teach people, help young people to translate their unique talents and interests into solutions to other people's problems. That is to create value for others. I mean, this is what makes people happy. When you can create value for others using your own signature talent and interest to help others. If we can do those two things, I think we have hope. But those two things are very difficult to do because government systems always control students' time by mandating the same curriculum for everybody. And we also force teachers to be like instructional machines in the classroom to teach, to teach, to teach, not to let people learn.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It sounds like, and please correct me, Yong, if I'm off track a little bit, but it sounds like what you're talking about is that as systems, we start with kind of knowing the knowledge outcomes we want, and you're proposing that actually we need to flip that and we need to know the students as the
Exactly.
first thing in education.
Exactly. Well, not only know the student, but let the student teach you. In a sense,
Mm.
you know how much, right now we're still trying to fight with schools. We spend so much money connecting computers, internet to schools. Now we're spending much money to ban students' cell phones. Isn't that ironic? Because, and we also tell people if we don't know what children are doing, we try to ban it. You cannot play the game. You cannot get an AI. When Victoria, I think when the generative AI first came out, I said, we can't have that in school. You can't ban it. So I think it's not only for us to understand child, is to respect them as human beings and respect them as changing forces of society, respect them as the maker of our future.
Mm. And I love how you picked up too on that, helping them to see their gifts, but also think about how they can add value for others with those gifts. And I imagine
Exactly.
by
Yeah.
us truly respecting students, we do half the work already to get them there too. How
Exactly.
could my gifts value others?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. So one of the things we hear about a lot in, it's particularly in Australia, and you have a much better idea kind of internationally whether this is a theme, but we quite often hear teaching and learning and well-being spoken about as separate things. But it sounds like when you're talking, you're almost talking about they're intrinsically linked. They're a part of each other. That sense of well-being as well as learning.
Wait, and they are intrinsically, connecting. I'm quite unhappy that right now we're trying to, teach social and emotional learning. We separate them. Human beings, your cognitive, your physical, your psychology, your emotion are all deeply connected. But the real connection rests in one thing: Are you doing something purposeful? Are you doing something meaningful? Are you serving the purpose? And that, of course, comes from the foundation. Means, do you have agency? Do you have the opportunity to exercise your self-determination? I mean, human beings have been seeking liberty for a long time. Why? Because we want to be able to self-determine. We want to have a chance to make our own decisions. And when you make that decision, hopefully it is to do something meaningful to you and also helpful to others. When you
Mm.
have liberty to do anything you want, you have to also enjoy the consequence. But it is much better to do something for others. In our schools, we don't teach that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also believe when it comes to our relate education model, which is different to a lot of other models, that we almost start with the teachers because we believe it takes a well and safe and engaged teacher to do the same with the students. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think and I think Justin, it's fascinating to me when I travel around. I think it's when we use this one term, teacher. A teacher is a teacher is a teacher. I think we have so many different kind of teachers. We also, a teacher is a profession, but in that profession, you have all sorts of teachers. That's the same when we talk about students, schools. When I get old, I'm very nervous about overgeneralization now. So I really think it's very crucial in a new age with big data, with generative AI, with the large language models. We should be able to understand individuals much better than before. We should enable a lot more individuality. So yes, definitely, I agree with you. But at the same time, teachers, a teacher in Gippsland is a different from a teacher again in probably in Melbourne or Sydney or in Brisbane. If you're born in Darwin, which I think your life might be very different from in Perth. So just think about that the diversity of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the risk of generalizing again, my next question probably comes to I've spent the last 10 years working with like children and young people who are disengaged from mainstream education. So education in where they live can't currently meet their needs. And I'm just wondering, as you talk about this, kind of acknowledging that students have a whole range of barriers, right? But what do you imagine schools should be doing to ensure that particularly vulnerable kids and students are well supported?
Well, Justin, I think we need to understand this. Schools only serve a portion of students. In many ways, schools are great if you are great what schools want you to do. And there are definitely people who are great with that. By and large, schools disengage students. And I would say probably, schools are designed to disengage students because you only serve those who are great with school subjects. If you look at Australia, reading and math, literacy and math. If you're good at that, you're a good student. So schools are designed to do that. What I'm right now trying to work on is to encourage schools to diversify their offerings so they can serve more people. That right now, when Australia and the US and many countries, when they try to stress the idea of equity, they just think some people are slower, some people are lower. They want to put a step up so they can see something. Do you say those cartoons? Remember? Oh, this is that's stupid. It's
Yeah.
you can't do that because you are different. That's just I'll give you more steps, 2 steps, then you'll go better. That just doesn't work that way. Schools have to diversify its offerings. Those people who favor sports, favor music, doing dancing, and they can create value in different ways. But schools don't. Schools discriminate people based on cognitive styles. School discriminate against people based on their interest. School discriminate people against people based on their birthplace. We don't, we need to add value to people with with what they have. When you work with disengaged students, don't make them to become a traditional good student. Make them better at what they do and use their purpose, use their strength to help others. Engage young people. Disengage are very valuable if you give them another chance. So I'm working with schools to create new diverse opportunities. There's a school actually that's great, All Saints College in Perth. We've been working on different things. So that it's there are different models of change. Anyway, I know you work with disengaged students for a long time, but I'm just kind of quite passionate about how to diversify schools' offerings.
Yeah, that answer actually excites me. It excites me thinking about what we could do differently in the future. And kind of on that, and I've heard you speak about this before, but I would often hear this in schools where we get caught up in thinking we know what the future looks like and what kids need. I just want your
Well,
response to that.
well, that's that's a very silly idea. It's like we talk about prepare students for the future, get students ready for the future, as if a future has been manufactured just wait there for you. It doesn't go that way. Students are the makers of the future. Whatever you teach them, whatever you help them to become, they will create a future. Their future is your retirement. You got to be careful with that. You want to be careful. You want them. So you want to help. You are creating future makers, not visitors to the future. The same thing like society. People say, "Oh, we want to make sure you meet the needs of the society." But who is the? What is the society? You are a member of the society. You cannot be. So that is, I think schools always think, we got to get kids, ready for the future. Of course, who doesn't want? But that's a fake statement. It doesn't work that way. Your future, you are the maker of the future. So you do not walk into a future made by Elon Musk. You can go against Elon Musk if you want. I think schools have not done a good job to enable, to inspire our children to think they are confident, to think they can do big things. A lot
Yeah,
of people complain about Trump. A lot of people complain about politicians. Why do we have bad politicians? Remember, bad politicians come out of your schools. Well, they went to school someday, and all the voters. How did the bad politicians turn out to be on top? Because we had the voters. What do you call them, bad voters? No, they were educated in that way. They thought that way. They, of course, have everybody has the right to make decisions.
yeah. I love this too because I feel like each answer is coming back to a really relational approach to education. Um, and I think that's refreshing as well. I think as educators we get great joy from that work.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if every educator, if every school leader, policymaker truly cares about students as human beings, like you were talking about relationship, if we truly believe other as equal human beings who wants to do good, I think it's a very exciting job. That's why I like to work with teachers, work with students, because no matter what, you got to believe they're human beings, and human beings are precious. And cherish this precious life, and hopefully turn them into someone who can positively contribute to other people's life. I mean, I think that's the future economy. We create value for each other.
That's wonderful, Young, and I could go all day actually, but I know we have to get to some questions, etc., and I need to hand over to Chris. But just want to say like how grateful I am to hear you speak, and it's challenging, but it's exciting to think about the way that we can reimagine education.
Well, definitely exciting. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
Young, I have a million questions for you, but there's definitely some questions in the chat. And probably one that a lot of people will be thinking about here is, we've talked about policymakers and trying to change the system and the way that the systems are, but where do you start with something like that?
Well, that's wonderful. I've been doing a lot of research. I've been running a lot of experiments in different countries with the schools, including Australia. Like I said, Perth, Victoria, New South Wales, and South Australia, in Adelaide. I've done a lot of different experiments, and also I've done experiments in China. I was just meeting there, for the past 6 years. I think the thing about education reform, first thing, we expect the system to do some wonderful things, which doesn't happen. No system does wonderful things. Okay, you got no system is able to innovate. System responds to innovations. So, like the Australian education system, the Victorian system, the New South Wales system, they serve too many people. They have to be conservative. So don't expect them to do anything. Second thing, every system has done innovations, but they're not true innovations. They are what I call changes that don't make a difference. Okay, so they make a lot of changes, like you play with the Melbourne Declaration, the curriculum reformation, the NAPLAN testing, the teacher retraining. You've done all of those, but over the last 50 years, has education, the basic things improved? No. You look at a lot of data, it hasn't improved. They should stop doing that and they just maintain the system. And then third, when we talk about reform, I'm sure you guys have run into this. We always talk about reform at scale. We reform the entire school, entire system. Everybody has to change. No, that's the big mistake we make. Why technology advances? We have a new technology, you don't require everybody to buy it, but it's there by some early adopters. Then it has a chance to survive, to try it. But in education, we don't. We use one system, replace another system. We think that's bad. So education is the pendulum swing. In a few years, direct instruction is good. In another few years, project-based learning is good. Because we try to replace everybody. So the new approach is what I call school within a school. You maintain whatever you are doing, but you open new possibilities. You create a new market of the new idea. I bet no matter where you are, every school will have a few students, a few teachers, a few parents who want something new. So that's what I call diversifying. Diversify this. So if you go to All Saints College, it's a great, traditional school doing very well. It's an independent school, and this is in Perth. But they opened a new school called the Street School in the studio school in Fremantle Market. I think of opening another one because that serves a different kind of students, a different kind of education. In China, we've been doing the same thing. Many people think it's impossible to change China's schools. We've been doing it for 6 years. We've been expanding. We start with 2 classes. Now we got, I don't know how many students, are involved in this new idea. So we talk about personalization, finding solving problems are the basic idea, and then connect it with others. But then you don't do it with every student. You start with small. Start small. So you give the new ideas a chance to try without losing your traditional, approaches. It's very successful. If anyone is interested in this, they can contact me. We're going to do a little conference in December. They can come to visit to see how it's going. It's possible to change, but don't start with a system. System responds to changes.
I think you've also managed to answer several of the other questions that were in the chat with that response as well, Yong. And just to pick up on what you said there about December and that conference, is that going to be in Perth? Is that at Austin School?
No, that's going to be actually I think that's going to December one will be in Chongqing, China. I
Okay.
think in Perth that's going to be April. Next April there will be some conferences. Yeah.
Beautiful. And so you're back out in Australia around about the kind of April, May time next year?
Yeah, I will be definitely back in April. Then I will be back in May in Hunter Valley to work with the Catholic school system.
Oh, beautiful. And if anyone, just while we're on this topic, if anyone here was interested in connecting with you and finding out more about your work while you're here, how could they do that?
Well, they can find on my website is zhaolearning.com, ZHAO learning.com, or they can follow me on X now. I don't use it often, but you can find it.
Yeah.
The best one is I think Elon Musk practically destroyed it. But anyway, they can also connect me on my LinkedIn. They can find me Yong Zhao, or if they have any connection, just send me an email. That's quick. yongzhaoeducation@gmail.com. Thanks, Chris.
Brilliant. Thanks, Young. And another one just here, just where because someone asked a question about diversifying, and I think you've touched on that, but quite a few others have asked about how does all of this fit within, the ATAR scores, year 12 exams, university access, the curriculum. I mean, is that still in the same lines as we've got to innovate and not expect the system to change around us? Or what about when so many of us are working towards all those
Well, I think
structures?
it's kind of irrelevant right now. If you look at ATA score, that's it's like once you move down below 70%, it's really meaningless. And but then there are so many universities taking students like below like third percentile, 40%. You shouldn't even use it. It's because you're attracting different kind of students. Why would you? I think schools cultivate the top 10%, then basically let the rest go to waste. You don't have to do it. I'm not against any system if you want to use it. I'm sure that always people want to use it. I'm really encouraging people who cannot succeed in the traditional way to seek new ways instead of trying to bang their heads against the wall to say, I will beat you. I will be the number one. You can't be number one. There's only one way to be number one. There's only one number one. But I think people need to accept that. I think school leaders, Justin, you might agree with me. Teachers, school leaders have this fanciful vision that we can help improve our school so we can do that. It's in a competition model. Why would you do that? Because you see, mathematically, it's impossible, right? Mathematics, it's impossible. We talk about everybody is above average. Is that possible? It is possible only when you have many bell curves. If you have many bell curves, it's possible. I mean, you can be above the, average in height. I can be above average in weight. I can be above average in terms of number of hairs I have. I think you have different ways to rethink. But unless you accept different bell curves, you are always trying to bang your head against somebody else.
Mm.
So that's why I think when we're solving the equity problem, we cannot use the same standard. We should measure opportunities for others.
I like that. And how are we measuring those opportunities for others? Maybe that's a question we need to be asking more in education rather than measuring grades, measure opportunities.
Exactly, Chris. That's so powerful. You should talk to Australia a lot. Schools keep using reading and math, NAPLAN scores to measure. They don't measure how we have served students. We have forcing teachers, or adjusting units. We are forcing teachers, school leaders, to treat schools like an emergency room to fix children with reading and literacy, as if that will be successful. You cannot, because it's impossible. There is a limitation in that. So I mean, I know this is we got to measure opportunities. We do not measure the outcomes because you compete outcomes. People have different outcomes. I mean, how do you compare your actors? Some of your beautiful actors. What's the Australian woman who was an actress, a beautiful woman?
Oh, there's so many
You
to choose
forgot.
from,
Well,
Young.
well, no, in the movie, the Australian, the two Australians, right? Remember that?
The ones that come to my mind are Nicole Kidman and Margot
Oh,
Robbie.
Nicole Kidman. Okay, yeah, okay. So yeah, so think they are great in what they do. But you take another mathematician, a biologist, a technician, or somebody who bakes good, bakes great croissant in a restaurant. That's equally good. People have to have different roles. We should not set up fancy, impossible, unreasonable, illogical goals for everybody to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think Australia definitely punches above its weight in the Hollywood actors. We seem to have a fair few Australians in Hollywood movies. I think we must have some good actors here. Um, Young, I'm gonna end on a comment rather than a question because quite a few people have posted it in the chat and also up-liked it as well. But I think there's a strong sense from the people who have joined that you should be the new head of, I think, not just any Australian state and territory education department, but I think we're talking like just all of them, federal level. I think everyone wants you to be the new head of education. So that's quite a compliment.
Thank you. Well, I just want to emphasize with one thing. It's possible to change. We should keep that hope. I think, and our
Mm.
change has to be different. We're doing too many changes without being different. So I think change is possible. Let's do that. Thank you.
Yong, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us your time this afternoon. I also fully appreciate that you've been doing it in transit after significant delays and breakdowns at airports. And so really appreciate that you've still, fought through to be here with us and give us some time. I know you're probably looking forward to just getting checked into your hotel. Thank you from me. Thank you from Justin. Thank you from everybody listening. We really appreciate you giving us a bit of your thoughts this afternoon.
Thank you so much. See you
Thank
next
you,
time.
Thanks, Yong.
Bye bye.
And for everyone that's still here, what we will do is we will send round an email afterwards with a link to the recording of this once we're kind of finished. And also we'll make sure you've got the link to Yong's website so that you can connect with him and follow in with him if you would like to. The model that Justin was talking about, the work that he does with schools, very much around supporting that whole school culture of safety and positive relationships and well-being. If you're interested in learning more about that, there is a QR code up on the screen just now, but we'll also pop that in an email for you afterwards. If you don't already follow our LinkedIn, again, QR code on the screen, and you can follow our LinkedIn. We try to do webinars like this as often as we can. It's really important to us that we are putting information out there, that we're starting conversations. Exactly as Yong said, we can make change and change that will create a difference. And that's what we're trying to do with some of these webinar series. So please follow us. Please keep in touch with us. Please join any of these future events and webinars that we'll bring to you with amazing partners like Yong. Thank you for a bit of your time this afternoon. Apologies for the delays. I'm glad we got there in the end. And Justin, any final parting words or thoughts from you?
No, other than to all the educators in the room, thank you for your work. We know there's amazing things happening in schools across Australia, and I would say, as much as we spoke a lot about systems and maybe systems ineffectiveness today, we know that the people on the ground with students are the conscience of any system, and I want to thank you for that work you do each and every day.
And I'm actually just going to end with one comment in the chat as well, that this has actually been a really enlightening webinar that's helped provide some language to something that people have been trying to say about schools for years. And so I'm so glad that even if one person in the audience was able to find some words and some language to describe how they feel and to describe their purpose and hope and the opportunities and some of those things that we've talked about, then I'm really pleased that we had this webinar tonight. And I'll also pass that feedback on to Yong as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay well, and hope you also have a lovely, restful weekend when it comes. Thanks, everyone.